So, welcome to the show again. And today I have a wonderful guest, someone who I could probably say has saved my life. I met this lady, this is Stephanie Weager, also known as Stephanie Lifeguard on social media, and astral guidance,
Guidance, yeah.
astral guidance, yep. And so our meeting happened 2011. And just very quickly, I was in a really bad place, and a friend of mine at the time was very worried about me too. And she paid Stephanie to come to my house and give me her words of wisdom to try and get me back on track again. And I think that's probably one of the most important meetings I've had in my life. I was a heap. And we've kept in touch regularly. You are my source of guidance. And your astrological forecast every year keeps me on track, even if I do nudge you during the year. It's not happening. It's not. Oh, it happened. It happened. And so I've always had a general interest in astrology, but Stephanie has really helped to increase my knowledge on that. So today I'm going to pick her brains, and I'm really interested to hear her story, and then we can go in and see how astrology actually helps relationships. So welcome to the show, Stephanie.
Oh, thank you, Deb. Well, thank you for inviting me, and thank you for a lovely intro. And yes, it has been a few years, but we're still in touch. And I'm glad. I'm glad it's helped. I'm very glad to say I seem to help people all over the world. So long may that continue.
Yes, well, you seem to attract people from all over the world. I
Yeah,
think.
I think I can truthfully say I'm global now, which is pretty good. I've been doing it for about 36 years, and it's taken me that long to be global. But it's why we were laughing just now of trying to set my camera up because I'm not very technical. And yet I spend most of my time going to India or China or Singapore or south of France, and yet I couldn't seem to get my camera for you. But oh, well,
well,
that's a bit typical in the day of the life for me.
well, we've learned something together today. We
We
we got
have,
through it, and
we
we're
did.
still friends.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So, I wonder if you'd be willing to give us a potted history of you and your life and what you've done.
Absolutely. Potted, well, it's quite long actually, it's quite varied. I do wear many different hats, as people who follow me on social media know. Essentially, yes, I say a life guide. It's a form of sort of life coach, spiritual advisor, sometimes counselling, sometimes just plain common sense. It's the tool I use is astrology, which we're going to go into a bit more, and I use my own natural intuition that's always been there. I'm also an author. I absolutely love writing and writing novels, which you are aware of. I
Mhm.
will one day, when I have time, write the astrology book. I haven't got around to it yet. I'm a wife, a mother, family member, and I also now run an Airbnb business with my two sons in the Cotswolds. So I'm pretty busy and keep myself working 7 days a week. And then, of course, there's the candles and fragrances that I use for natural well-being, which also fits in with astrology because it's all about using nature and different people like different fragrances. Lavender would help one person, but maybe not another. So you can also use astrology for health, well-being, and healing. So,
Mhm.
which is what I do.
Mhm. And what star sign are you?
Well, I am an Aquarius, hence the cramming in, being creative, being artistic, being a talker, no good with technology, very sociable, sort of out there kind of person. But as I say to everyone, you're never just one sign because we are made up of 11 different planets. So, although I am Aquarius outwardly, I also have Scorpio in my chart, which is the analytical side, the intuitive side, the compassion, the feelings that water signs have. And then I have the moon on the day I was born was in Capricorn. So the moon is your home life. The moon is the kind of person you are at home, the kind of house you live in. whether you have children or not, whether you're a dog person, a cat person, whether you live in a city or the countryside. So everyone's chart is made up of all different elements to make them the person they become. So when someone says to me, "Oh, what kind of day is it today for Scorpio?" Well, the post I put this morning on was a bit of fun about which made you smile, and that's sort of, you know, general astrology. That yes, Aquarians are not particularly jealous people, and Scorpio people are known for being jealous. But of course, that's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek generalisation, because as I say to everyone, and when they read my posts every Sunday with my horoscopes, and it makes me laugh every Sunday who I see who's clicked on first. And I think, oh, he or she, yeah, they were desperate. They clicked on at 7 a.m. So they must be having a bad week. And then they'll message me and say,
I'm not going to click on now. I know that you're watching me.
exactly. Then they message me privately and say, oh, you know, I loved astral guidance today, and I'm not quite sure that applied to Virgo or Libra. And then I say, but you know, your moon is actually Cancer. So if you read Cancer, and then they say, oh yeah, right. So everyone is made up of a combination of elements and planets on the day they were born. And that's called a birth chart.
So I am Sun in Scorpio, Leo rising, and
You are.
moon in Taurus. So
Yeah.
how would you put that in a description?
Powerful lady. A powerful lady, deeply emotional, often misunderstood. You see, when I look at someone's chart, it tells me instantly. It's a bit like, I don't know, someone looking at a spreadsheet. If you're an accountant and you look at a spreadsheet, you instantly know, oh, profit loss, you know, whatever. When I look at a birth chart, there's always a theme coming out that this person can be extremely emotional, or this person can be oversensitive, or the opposite. This person can be totally insensitive and a bit of a handful. This is why I like doing the birth charts of newborn babies, because there's nothing to go on. There's no body trying to influence you, say, oh, I know I'm Scorpio, but actually I think I'm more Leo. So a newborn baby is good, and then you look at it, and then over the years, it's wonderful when the family come back to me and say, you said he was going to be a rugby player, and he is. I mean, for you, Scorpio, Leo, and Taurus, that's so powerful. A Leo, the lion. When you have a birth chart with Leo in the beginning of it, i.e., your rising sign, ascendant, that will take over. So a lot of your Scorpio side gets squashed by Leo. You have beautiful hair. That's very significant of a Leo. And well, yeah, what you do. And this is if you're looking at future horoscopes and predictions and trends, then this is a very important year for you. And it's not surprising me that you're going into broadcasting and more kind of media, because that would be your Scorpio Leo bit connected. The Taurus side is how you are as a person at home. I know you're a mum, and as a Taurus mum, you will be quite a good mum, very protective, very caring. The zodiac signs are taken after symbols of animals quite often. And you know, when I say Taurus, the bull, it doesn't mean you're like an old bull, but you know, you're in the field, you're very protective. Your home is your castle. And although you're a career lady, which I know you are, for you, having the family for, you know, a meal, Sunday lunch, Christmas, traditional picnic on the beach where you're living now, all that kind of stuff, that is
And
very.
work from home.
And work, absolutely, it's the home, absolutely. So that's how you put it all together. So you start putting the Scorpio sun sign, which is very alluring, very appealing. You make friends easily. You have compassion. You have empathy. But then the downside, if I look at a Scorpio, Leo, Taurus combination, if you lose it on a bad day, watch out, world. Because you would be quite vitriolic, or you would be quite final. This is my decision.
Absolutely, yeah.
This is my decision, full stop. It's all up for negotiation. So that's how I sort of describe you. A powerful lady with a big heart. You've got a big heart.
Well, Send me your bill. So let's take it back to how you got into astrology.
Well, this will make you smile. It was Harrods department store. So, yeah, actually, literally, the book department of Harrods bookstore. My mother used to go to London a lot for her career. She was a career lady. So if it was school holidays or something, she would often take me with her. And I would amuse myself for an hour or so in a museum or a shop or something like that until she came back from her meeting. It was all a bit safer in those days. It was a bit different. So I knew Harrods quite well. I called it Mum's Corner Shop because that's what she always wanted to do, is pop into Harrods. So while I was waiting for her for about half an hour, I went into the book department and I came across a book about astrology and one that said how to be an Aquarius. So I picked it up and I started flicking through it and I thought, oh, this is interesting. Oh, this actually really makes sense. So then my mother joined me back and I said, can I have this? Because she was the exchequer. I didn't have any money. And I said, can I have this? And she sort of looked at it. What is it? Is it suitable? And I said, oh, it's about astrology. Well, luckily for me, she was fairly into astrology. She didn't dismiss it at all. So she said, well, if that's what you really want. And I said, yes, please. So I thought, I've been a good girl. I deserve it. So anyway, she bought me the two books. One was a general one on astrology and one was on Aquarius. Well, on the train back and when I got home and all the following couple of days, I was totally engrossed in those books. And everything was like, wow, the penny's dropping. Yeah, I am like that. This is me. And then, of course, I started looking at the family because I lived in the house with two parents, mother, father, brother and sister, and a very, very regular contact with two grandmothers who looked after us a lot when mother was working. So I naturally progressed into doing the charts of them. And I started like that. Aquarius is a born analytical person anyway. So for me, it came naturally. And then I felt it's like learning Italian or German or Spanish. It suddenly all came into effect. And I understood. And then I felt I understood my family much better. Don't think they understood me, but I understood them much better. And I think they thought, well, if that's her hobby, then it's better than some hobbies she could choose. And I would just shut myself away looking at birth charts and studying the planets because, of course, astrology is for forming from the planets, how they are formatting and how they're moving. So there was learning the analytical side of astrology, that Taurus means home or Leo means power. And then there was also the astronomy and the universe side of where the solar system is and what it meant and at any one time. So I think I was about aged eight. And many, many years later, I've been doing it. So people say to me, oh, I'd like to learn astrology. And I say, well, I've been doing it for about 58 years. So you don't learn it in a week, but please try, please start. It's a great thing to learn.
Even if you just have a very basic knowledge, it helps you to understand, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Astrology is an ancient form of natural psychology.
So would that be your definition of it? Because when I mention to clients or friends, oh, are you into astrology? Oh, no, that's a bit woo-woo for me. So how would you put it in a sentence for someone?
It's a natural form of psychology. It is a tool to the mind. That's what I've often put in blogs when I'm writing things like that. It was practiced by the ancient Greeks and the Romans. It is BC. It's referred to in the Bible. The three wise men were astrologers. And it came about really by shepherds in the mountains and hills of Greece and seeing stunning constellations of stars and movements. And of course, they were out in the elements all night with their sheep. And they started to notice that on different days, on different months, and at different times of year, there were different constellations. And they also began to realize that when the moon was shining brightly, a lot more things would happen.
Mm.
And then, they might have a whole load of lambs born, or there could be an almighty storm, and then they might lose some lambs. But they started to put it together, and whether it's spring or autumn, winter, summer, the seasons. And then the Greeks started to put the form of astrology, and they put it into animals, which is why you've got Leo the lion, Taurus the bull, etc.
Mm.
And then these shepherds were quite clever people. I mean, people who work with the elements in nature usually are clever, but they then started relating it to their own lives, and they started seeing that fertility, so growing crops, or even the women in their life, they suddenly realized that, a woman's fertility would be at a certain time, or when she had a child, it like fitted in, and then that moon was there and the other stars were there, and they put it all together. So it's very clever stuff, really.
Well, it's all cyclic, isn't it?
Absolutely. And then the Greeks used it a lot for health. And I think so did the Romans, which is why it then links in with aromatherapy and herbalism, which I do the aromatherapy through my products. And that's why you link in, because, for example, with yourself, a Scorpio woman is more likely to have sensitivity in the gut or the reproductive area. For Leo, it's often the torso, or heart, or even sometimes strong mental moods, very proactive or sometimes not proactive. And then Taurus, it will be sort of fairly overall strength. So again, putting all three of you together.
Yeah, that's me then.
You're a very, very strong woman, but at times, if you're very tired or if you're under par, then it will go to your gut, reproductive area, and then all to the mind. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And
And
in
then,
terms of being feeling strong, I'm strong in my mind, but physically strong, sometimes that can show itself. Lack
oh,
of physical
absolutely.
strength.
And
Yeah.
and there's a lot in the media now about women and menopause, or PMT. And I know that's slightly getting off the subject, but astrology does help with that, because you can look at someone's chart, you can see. It's always useful to perhaps look at the mother's chart as well, if it's known, because families' charts go in together. So your mum will have Scorpio, Leo, or Taurus somewhere prominent in her chart.
Yeah. And
Well,
my daughter,
and
is
your
it
daughter.
daughters too? Yeah,
Yeah,
she's Scorpio moon.
yeah,
She's
there you go.
Gemini and Scorpio moon.
Absolutely, because that
Mm.
has to fit in with the parents.
Mm.
So your daughter is likely to have allergies.
Yeah.
She could be very prone to allergy stuff, asthma, hay fever, and again the reproductive area. So therefore, you look at the chart, and then you can sort of guide what's good for their well-being. And then in comes the whether it's clary sage, rose geranium. So that's what made me very much into this. I've always done astrology, but in the last 10 years or so, with astral guidance, horoscopes, the candles, I put it all together because it's all helping people how to manage their lives in this very, very pressurized modern world. A
Mm.
little bit of old natural remedies coming in that helps. That's
Mm.
that's that's how I feel.
How it
And
all ties in.
yeah, and it does help with relationships, absolutely, which is your main question to me, or going to be.
Well, it's interesting that astrology doesn't just help you to understand your relationships. It helps you understand your health, your home life, your work life, and when you have a forecast done with and explains what's going on in all the houses,
Yeah.
it just it's amazing how accurate it can be as to what you're dealing with and what's come up. They've been my best Christmas present every year.
Yeah, thank you.
And I always get in, my Christmases get earlier and earlier, don't they?
Well, for young listeners of this who may be interested, obviously different age groups ask me guidance on different circumstances in their life, of course. So young people will say, when am I going to meet the right person? When am I going to get married? Will I have children? And actually men ask me that as well, not just women. It's very much this thing. And again, whilst a birth chart can't actually say you're going to meet the love of your life on 10th of July, but it can give guides, it can give trends and indications. And with fertility, for ladies who are quite anxious to have a baby, I always say you won't have one until your chart decides. If you want one at 24, but your birth chart indicates you're having it at 32, you're going to have it at 32. Or vice versa. If you plan to have one in your 30s and it comes when you're 20, that's in your chart. And they sort of say, oh, how did you know that? Well, I don't know. It's just when we're born, that's your blueprint. Your chart is your stamp when you're born, and equally when you depart from this world too.
Yeah. So it's like another version, if I was looking at this on a spiritual level, like a soul contract, what we
Yeah.
set up, and then that's almost like put into a document.
Yes.
When you do
Yeah.
your birth chart.
Yeah, it is. And once you've got a birth chart, that's it. That's the stamp, as you say, that's the contract. And then somebody interprets it over the years. That's how it goes. So that's what's called a horoscope, because that is an ancient word, probably Greek, but I'm not 100% sure on that. A horoscope means time, the clock, because you get horology, which is clocks. So horoscope is where the planets are scoping, and then therefore the clock, the time, the date becomes your horoscope.
Okay.
That's where it comes from. So once you know your actual birth chart, it is good to know the actual time of birth. And I usually laugh because people will say, oh, I have to ask my mum, she may not know. And I say, well, your mum was there, so she probably have a good idea. For those, of course, who are perhaps adopted, or who sadly mum has died, there's usually a way I can try and decipher it back, sort of roughly, because, as we just mentioned, the charts do have to fit in with the families. So there's usually be somebody around that gives you an indication of how you can get to the actual date of the time, the actual time of birth, because that is quite important.
And also place of birth as well, yeah?
Yeah, oh yes, of course, because of course it's all different all over the country. I mean, the time scales, east to west, and now I work quite a lot in India through video calls. That's really, really a new thing for me, because they are very, very guided by astrology. Astrologers in India are classed as very important people. But their astrology is slightly different because of the Eastern time, because of how the moon comes and goes. So that's been quite a learning curve for me. But it's interesting, and their culture is so different, of course. But even in the Western world, if you're born in England and someone else is born in Spain, there's going to be an hour or so's difference in time.
And I've noticed that when I've got in contact with you and say, oh, I've just met this person and what do you think? And then they've come from different parts of the world, and their chart can give an indication from the culture and the type of person and through their chart as well.
Yes.
And whether that would fit with me.
Well, yes, because we've mentioned that the ascendant or rising sign, some people call it the ascendant, some people call it the rising sign. That's the sign that is there at your actual point, time of birth. So you're born under the sign of Scorpio, but your actual time that you arrived in this world, the planet sign rising in the east, and it is always the east, even though we're the west, was Leo. So that's how you become your rising sign. Okay. Now, what I've noticed, for example, over the years, if I'm working with a client in the West Indies and that part of the globe, they are nearly a very high percentage of them are either born under the sign of Libra or ascendant Libra, or they're double Libra. And I think that, again, is the culture of fertility, when their parents sort of got together, and the gestation time, and when they're born and things like that. And therefore it does vary from culture to culture. A lot of Indian people have a lot of cancer in their chart, sign of Cancer, the water sign. So it's very interesting around the globe how it varies.
Yeah. And another thing that I've learned from you is that the planets move around at different in astronomy. You know, they move
Yes,
around and they hit your birth point at different times. And so, say for example, Saturn, that takes 30 years to come
yes,
round.
yes.
And I remember from my own approach to my 30th birthday, my daughter's just turned 29, and I've had some clients come through recently who are hitting 28, 29, and life is starting to change. Can you say more about what the Saturn return is?
Yeah, Saturn is the big one. So you're absolutely correct. The planet, so the sun, for example, takes 28 to 30 days. The moon changes sign every 2 to 2.5 days. Saturn, as you say, takes 29 to 30. It's the big one. So you're quite right. As somebody starts coming up to the age of 29, 28, 29, you would expect them to be quite mature then. They should have some idea of career and or life partner, but it will bring what they should be doing. So, for example, if you've always wanted to be a nurse, and then when you got to the age of 28, you somehow changed direction and became an IT specialist, that it's Saturn putting where you are. Now, we call it the head teacher in a way, trying to put it in ordinary language. It's like the head teacher calling you into the office saying, okay, you're 28, what are you going to do with your life now? And, the person would normally say, oh, not sure. And then Saturn would say, okay, well, this is what we have in store for you. So it's the first Saturn return that really starts making you the person that you are, the person you're meant to be, and creating your life path for the next 30 years, which takes you to the second Saturn return. So I always say to my clients, if you're in that category of 28, 29, careful what you wish for, but also the decisions you make are likely to be very long standing for about 30 years. And if you look at people's career, you will often find, or sadly, even marriages, relationships, whatever, you'll sadly often see there's a big drop after 28 to 30 years. If someone has been married that long, yeah, hopefully they go on to do the next 20, but very often there'll be a turning point. So you can lose a parent, perhaps, on your Saturn return, or a grandparent, or you decide to study, or you have your first child. It's something very, very big that happens on Saturn returns.
Mm. And when you get to the 60th, is what happens there?
Right, so when you get to 59, 60, naturally you're obviously that much older, so you're likely to become perhaps a grandparent. Or if you have a partner, one of you, the partnership could become ill. There's also the question of retirement. Well, it used to be, in this day and age now, retirement has to be sort of in your 70s. But even so, you're still starting to think about it. As you come up to 60, your bones aren't quite as fit as they were, or lifestyle, that kind of thing. Because we're all now hopefully living much longer and being more healthy and looking after ourselves, people will actually have a new life at 60. That they can actually learn to fly that aeroplane they always wanted to fly, or they could sadly end a 30 odd marriage for whatever reason, and they start another one. So yeah, it's the second biggest turning point. Now, if you have your third Saturn return, if you are very lucky to reach 89, 90, then logic's going to tell you that the third Saturn return is well, it's slowing you down. It's preparing you for the next chapter and beyond.
Mm.
Even if you go on till 98, 99, like the late Queen did, the last few years of her life were very bit slower, a bit more restricted, a few health problems. So it happens to the famous, not just the ordinary. It's that's what Saturn does. You go in 30-year cycles of life.
Mm. That's really interesting. Well, both my kids are approaching it, so let's see what comes out. I can see the changes in them both already, so they're kicking in.
It's all exactly. And then also, just to reassure people, it doesn't happen all in a week. Saturn return will start kicking in at about 28, 29, as I said.
Mm.
It finally waves goodbye to you at about 31. And then when it does, it gives you a present. It brings something in life that you weren't expecting, because it's put you through it a little bit. It's transformed your life or your health or your relationships. And then it brings you the dream job or the dream baby or the dream house or the worldwide travel. So it's worth hanging on in there with Saturn, because it's all very worth it in the end.
Mhm. So let's move it on a little bit further. And astrology with relationships. So I have checked in with you many times. Does this sign work with this time? No, Deb. No, move on.
Hello, sorry.
Well, I trust what you say. So, yeah, give an overview of what works, what doesn't. Let's have a play with it.
Okay, I'm going to answer that question by going the opposite. If you do not believe in astrology, if you do not consult astrology, if you don't even really know what it is, you think it's just some mumbo jumbo written in the newspaper every day, and you meet a person, a relationship, a potential love partner, a friend, neighbour, boss. After a few months, you either think, I so click with this person. Wow, I was meant to meet this person. It's like a soulmate. We'll really click. Or they'll say to me, I don't know what it is. I've really tried. I've really tried to get on my boss, but it just doesn't work. And then I will ask for the dates of birth, and they will give it to me, and I will go, ah, that's why. So, because there's good in everybody, and you have to think of chemistry and background and culture and lifestyle. That all helps with a relationship. But there are going to be certain combinations that really do click. Now, Mercury and Venus are two planets that come in with relationships. So when someone's asking me if they've met Mr. or Mrs. Right, I look at the Mercury and Venus. Mercury is communication. Venus is love life, obviously, and the nice things. And Mars is energy, temper, mood. So absolutely anyone I've ever met in my life, the first thing I do is start looking at their chart. but but equally, if you find that you don't get on with someone, but you have no choice because this is your next door neighbour and they're not moving, or it is a boss and it's your dream job, so you don't really want to leave that job, then astrology can help you understand. So a lot of people who are managing directors will perhaps Leo or an earth sign in their chart, for example. Not everyone, but they will. They're good managers. So you may have a boss that's a Leo or a Virgo or a Leo-Virgo combination somewhere, because they make very good CEOs, managing directors, those kind of types, okay? So if you happen to be a Pisces employee, for example, you could struggle, because Pisces can be very oversensitive, intuitive, far-sighted, but a Leo or a Virgo boss is not slightly interested in that. They're interested in fact. They're interested in the spreadsheet. They're interested in your sales figures. They're not interested that you're a bit dreamy with Neptune in the moon. Do you see what I'm saying? So I therefore then help the clients how they can perhaps handle the boss, or help the boss perhaps understand them a bit more.
Do you actually work with companies?
I have done.
Is that? Hmm?
Yeah, yes, I have done. I currently work with a few doctors and GP surgeries, actually,
Mm.
because doctors too, and GP practice in India, actually,
Mm.
because I'm helping within the practice, not their patients, of course, but within the practice and colleagues, and how they manage their own work-life balance. Because
Mm.
being, for example, in India or even Dubai, I work with medical people in Dubai, because it's a cultural difference there of working and then looking after the family and being responsible for parents as well as children. So I help them try and work out the balance there.
And so if you've got somebody who is, first of all, meeting a new person, they want to check is there a compatibility, then they can have their chart done. If somebody is married or in a long-term relationship and they've got problems, they can use astrology to find out what's going wrong and how to write it.
Yes, definitely. Now, one nice compliment that people have said about me, and I like to practice this, I practice positive astrology. So, we all have bad days, we all have things go wrong in life, and we have things that go wrong in relationships. But I do not like the doom and gloom of, oh, you're a Scorpio and you've met a Taurus, so that's never going to work. I don't do that. I say usually if it's a long-term relationship and people have been together for 25, 30 years and now they're hitting a bit of a sticky wicket. So the first thing I look at is the health section of the chart. Is one of them perhaps suffering some health issues, stress, or they got the health of a family issue that's worrying them? They could be very worried about a parent or child. You'll always find that somewhere in the charts of two people, there would have been a common theme how they got together. So even if the sun and moon don't necessarily gel, their Venus will. Very often, with the right person in your life, you will find that your sun sign has to go with the other person's moon sign. So for you, perhaps the ideal partner would be somebody who's got a Scorpio moon, because you've got a Scorpio sun sign, or you've got a Taurus moon, so you might quite like somebody who's got a Taurus sun sign or ascendant.
Well, I
Or
was
maybe
married to a Taurus sun sign for 23 years.
yes, you were. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So at some point, although you're no longer sadly married to that person, that's how you got together. That would have been the pull and the attraction for you at that age and your stage of life at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So it may not work out now, but it did then.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, it can help people, and it can help. I've done all kinds of relationships. It's like how you get on with your mother-in-law or your sister-in-law, or it's all any kind of relationship. How you deal with or feel or interact with another person.
Yeah. And then we have the $1 million question: is I knew we'd come to this at some point. Is when you're going to meet someone, and I know that this is a conversation I had with someone the other day too. Is that you can say, okay, this is your year, and as humans, we hang on to a human time frame, and because time is short here, we think, right, well, when are they going to come in? No, they're going to come in the next few months. But it doesn't work like that, does it? I mean, roughly you can be right. So how can astrology be useful to know that you're getting closer, but to not hang on the when?
Okay, so what I do then, because yes, of course, I'm asked that question several times a week, probably. Or I'm asked, I've met someone, is this going to work? So the first thing I do is look at the client's natal chart, which is the same word as a birth chart. That's where the planets were on the day they were born. Then I compare them to the horoscope, which is where the planets are today. So therefore, to meet the right, your ascendant, i.e. you is Leo, right opposite that, called the descendant, is your area of the birth chart that relates to love, marriage and relationships, or business partnerships or business commitments. So therefore you look at where the ascendant was on the day they were born and what planet is now going around on that opposite descendant. So that's the first thing to look at. Then you look at the person's, where their Venus is, where their Jupiter is. Is this a year when they're going to have a bit of luck, or are they going to have to wait another 18 months? I know if they do have to wait for another 18 months, then I would try and advise them how they can deal with that, or how they can, you don't want to say to someone, you've got to wait 2 years before you meet someone, because that's very soul destroying. So you explain other ways that perhaps they can occupy their time, which will also help them to meet someone. So it's a knock-on effect. And then I feel when the certain planets, for example, Uranus, which we haven't talked about, that's the planet of the unexpected. That's a very, very large planet that goes around every 80 years. So when it comes into your chart at certain times, it brings the unexpected, usually in a nice way. So very often people have met Mr. Right or Miss Right when Uranus is coming near their Sun, Venus, or Moon signs. So there's several things that to look at. And then, so the other person you meet, if you meet somebody who, if you've got a good Uranus point in your chart, that means you could meet somebody suddenly or out the blue, or perhaps someone you never thought you'd get on with, but you do. And then the other person's chart has a very strong Saturn coming up somewhere, or it may not be a Saturn return, but Saturn could be going through their house of relationships. So somebody, particularly a male, is likely to marry or get the ring or sign the mortgage contract when a Saturn is going through the partnership area of the chart.
Interesting.
So you then compare the two charts, and yeah, I've even done a chart for a famous racehorse that wasn't performing very well, and I did the chart of the horse and his jockey and his stable minder, and helped them to solve the problem. It literally was the horse was rebelling against the jockey.
Okay, so a compatibility thing.
Completely not compatible, and not having any empath. And horses, of course, as we know, are very powerful, very strong, and it was just picking up all the energies from his rider, and that solved that problem. So I mean, in Middle East, and as I say, India, the Arabian countries, Saudi Arabia, even parts of America, they will use astrology a lot in business. They may not admit it, but they do.
Mm-hmm. Wow, this is fascinating, and I didn't realize it could go animals as well. And I think this has given a really helpful overview to people of how important and how useful it can be in relationships, but also understanding yourselves. And obviously, this is your purpose in life. You know, you've hit on this. This is what you're meant to do, is to help and guide people. And the way that you do it is beyond helpful. And I know that you've really set me on the right track. And when I've gone off track, you've pulled me back again. And yeah, I totally trust it, and I trust you.
Well, thank you. Yeah, well, it's been 36 years I've been doing it, and I do intend to keep doing it for a few more. Yeah. But thank you, and you've been a joy to work with over the years as well.
Yeah, well, we've soul sisters, aren't we? So if somebody wanted to get in touch with you and fire some questions about astrology to you, or read your books, well, first of all, let's give yourself a bit of a plug for your astrology. How would people get in contact with you?
Well, I'm available on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and it's called Stephanie Lifeguide, and one word, or it is Astral Guidance. That if you search that will come up. I think I am on Google, so if you Google me, it will come up, and it will give you a way of contacting me. So Messenger, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, email, that's fine.
And you also mentioned you do your candles and scents, and how would people get in touch with you and find out more about that?
Yeah, same method. That's called Fragrances by Stephanie, and the company is Stephanie Jean England. And these products are either designed by me and then they made for my specification, or I even make some of them myself, depending on what it is. So again, the same way to contact me. I have got the process for a new website, but really it's so much easier just to do WhatsApp, email, Messenger, because then it's a direct link to me.
Well, I've used your shop for presents, and the comments that come back. My auntie got a candle and she said the packaging is beautiful and I'm not throwing it away.
Oh, thank you.
And
That's very good to hear. Thank you.
and then also you are an author and have kept me entertained and desperate to get onto the next book. So tell me about your books.
Yeah, I am. Well, again, from a very early age, I was right. I wasn't the kind of girl that was out climbing trees. I left that to my brother and sister. I was a very much creative person, beavering away in her bedroom at a desk. That's how I was. And as I say, I spent an awful lot of time with my mother in her career. I would sit in her office too. So it would just keep me quiet. I've always written. I've always obviously had quite a good imagination. But having been this guide for 36 years, I've met many, many, many thousands of people. And therefore, you can get these characters. You know, the characters aren't drawn from any one person. People have asked me, is it me? Is it someone I know? No, they're just characters that I've created from various types. And yes, I gave them a birth chart. I gave them a horoscope as characters so that I knew what I was dealing with. That, you know, one had to be a Virgo and something like that, and it all came together. And then I put it together because my love of France. I think my soul is French. Some of my DNA is French. I've spent a lot of time in my life in France, and therefore I write about what you know and where the heart is. So there are 3 available on Amazon. There's the 4th that's finished, and I'm in the process of editing. And I've got 1 or 2 more up here ready for next year.
Fantastic.
I won't stop.
So give us the name of the first book so people can find it on Amazon.
The first book is called French Destiny. And it is, again, it's all about relationships. It's a middle-aged British couple who had the dream of living in France, and they couldn't do it. And they were going on holiday to France every year, but they never had the money to buy the dream. Then, through inheritance from the husband's mum, they managed to find the dream. And they bought an old farmhouse in a hamlet in the hills of Provence. And once there, they realised it wasn't quite the dream that they envisaged. French law, French idiosyncrasies, not like England. The water system's different. The local mayor is in charge. All these kind of things started to happen. And
I think we should do a ... after that because the plot thickens, and I don't want you to give anything away.
Okay. Well, the rest of the book then is all about the relationships of people in that hamlet, French, English, old, young, and how they come together.
And you just dive into that family, and they become your family. They're really a great read, and thank goodness there's a trilogy because you've always got another 2 more to go.
Absolutely.
And your author's name?
Stephanie Jean, because
Stephanie Jean.
That's who I am.
Yeah, Stephanie Jean. Fantastic. Anyway, thank you so much for giving up your time today. It's been a really lovely slant to do this podcast, and I think it's just as important towards relationships as any of the others. I've been fascinated. Thank you so much.
And thank you, and the best of luck with all the other guests that you're going to interview. Thank you.